I was gonna go get some food before I had to do a ritual to summon my critiquing power, my critiquing abilities, but it's raining, and I don't really want to get out of my car. Welcome to Utah, where it rains 1 minute and literally stops the next. Just a great place, just a great place to be. It is absolutely pouring now, so you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna stay home. So Sundance Day 3 is over once again. I only saw one movie. The last 3 days I've only seen one movie, but tomorrow is the big megalodon of Sundance for me. I'm seeing upwards of 8 movies, so that's gonna be crazy. But today I watched Mass. Mass is a movie that really I only saw because of Jason Isaacs. I really love Jason Isaacs. I think he's a horrifically underappreciated actor, and I saw this simply because he was in it. And he's great in it. I mean, the cast is all very good in this. That's the biggest positive I can say about this movie, which is about 4 people in a room talking over their differences. That's the rundown of the premise, without getting too specific, because if I do get specific, then it kind of ruins the best element of it in its ambiguity in the first half, I will say. It's just a movie that feels like it was a play. If this wasn't a play, then it probably should be, and if it is a play and it's being adapted into a movie, then that makes a lot of sense, because it is just a one-room conversation going on, similar to One Night in Miami or Fences. It's one location with a very small amount of people just talking. And they move slightly, the blocking changes, the staging changes ever so slightly, but it is literally just an hour and 50-minute conversation. That's it. If that doesn't sound interesting to you, then you'll definitely not like this, but I do like movies like this. Not play movies. Movies adapted for plays I tend to not enjoy so much because it doesn't feel like they have enough that makes them cinematic. And I will say that this one does struggle with that at times, but I tend to like movies that are like character pieces or just long scenes of talking. I like that. I like when I can get into a character's head. I like when I can understand the agendas all at play. And this does a good job of that very early on. In the first 20 minutes or so, it's all setting up these characters. It's setting up the stage for these characters to come onto. It's basically just a lady talking with like a middle party that kind of organized this. And this lady is a redheaded church lady, and she's like the worst, most nightmarish character in the movie. She's so cringy, it was perfect. And then these 2 families come into the church, they get into this room, and the rest of the movie is in that room. They just talk. And the first 40 minutes, that first 20 minutes of the setup, and the next 30 minutes or so, maybe 25, I don't know for sure. I'll say the first hour is pretty strong, because you don't know what is going on. You don't know why they're there. You don't know who these families are. You don't know what the reason for this is. And that's the biggest plus for it. That's the biggest engaging factor that the movie has, is that you don't know what's going on. So you're trying to figure out what happened.
And the idea being, how do you get through something like this? And I came across these meetings, and from there kind of pivoted to the Forgiveness Project, and something that I'd always been fascinated by, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa.
And one family immediately seems more hostile, and one family seems more defensive. And so you kind of get a sense of what's going on early, and then as details reveal themselves, it starts to get a lot less interesting. And that's not because the story or what happened isn't interesting. It's because the way it's executed is very uninteresting. It starts to get very repetitive, and it gets almost melodramatic at points, especially near the end. It gets very melodramatic, and it just feels like it kept going long after it needed to. There's a point when all the characters get up and they leave the room and the door closes, and I went, great ending. And then it went on for another 15 minutes, it felt like. It just kept going. It just kept going. Long after, it overstays its welcome, to be frank. And I think the biggest issue I have with it is movies like this that are just conversations about ideals or agendas or why you did this and why didn't you do this. They need to lead to something, you know, they need to say something, and this movie just doesn't. It doesn't have either of those things. It doesn't feel like it leads anywhere. These two families talk, they kind of find a mutual footing, they then leave. The theme of the movie seems to simply be forgive people, because holding hate in your heart is not healthy. But that's like one of the most fundamental building blocks of life that you learn when you're in like second grade. That is not a new or interesting concept, saying forgive people. I mean, okay.
I knew my father was going to die, and he did. And the thing that happened between knowing and the event was that time is limited. And so please, please drop the armor, because you're not going to get any guarantees.
The characters are just like restating things over and over again for like a 20-minute chunk. It just feels like the movie is going in circles. And I will say conversations do feel like that at times, especially with these heavy subjects. Real life conversations sometimes just go in circles. But that's not cinematic. When a conversation feels like it goes nowhere in a movie, it is just going nowhere. You need to build to something. Movies imitate life, that is for sure. Art imitates life, but at times it's important for a movie to make a point or to say something, to change things, to make life a little bit more heightened, to heighten the reality. And this movie goes out of its way to not do that. And I don't know if that's intentional or if it's just they lost where they were going with it. The filmmaker just feels like he kind of lost the plot at a certain point. And it was really unfortunate. It was really frustrating near the end, because it does feel like it's building to something important. It feels like it's building to something that it wants to say, and it just goes nowhere. And then they just leave the church and the movie is over. It's a very strange movie because it is so strong in the first act and even parts of the second act. It is very performance heavy. The performances are all great. You understand the characters even though they're not particularly like full-bodied, because it is just them recounting other things and then coming to terms with those things. But you like it, you like them, and you are interested in what they're talking about because it is so ambiguous at first. But once all of that, the facade of that falls away, there's nothing underneath. There's nothing it's saying. There's no one to really latch onto, and then it ends. So, I don't know. I don't think I can recommend this one. Another disappointment for me. I liked it better than In the Earth. In the Earth was more consistently annoying to me, which is strange because I've seen a lot of people really liking that movie, and I feel like the black sheep not enjoying that, which is weird because I love horror movies. But this one, I just don't know who will enjoy it. It's so middling. It's so mediocre. It just feels like a movie that's going to slip my brain in a couple of days, especially after tomorrow when I see 8 other movies. I'm not sure this one will be remembered for very long. So I'll give it a 5. Solid 5 out of 10. I was leaning towards a 6 early on, maybe even a 7 really early on. I was like, okay, I really like where this is going. And then it just crashes into melodrama and repetition to the point where it's a 5, solid 5. So I'll see you tomorrow for the big boy. Bye-bye.